My first darshan I ever attended with Srila Prabhupada was in 1976. I had become the temple president in Miami, and I was only a 3-year devotee. And when I went to visit him, I didn't even know if I'd even get to see him or participate in a darshan, but I had a little book of photographs of what we were doing at that project. It was a pretty nifty project. We had ponds and swans and flower gardens. We were turning into a tropical paradise. And so Prabhupada was, when I got my chance to speak with him, which I didn't know was going to happen, it sort of took me by surprise. And Prabhupada opened the book, and very carefully, he was leafing through the book and looking at all the different pictures. And then he said to me, "So, you like to preach?" And I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I like preaching very much." And Prabhupada said, "So you develop this beautiful tropical paradise, and perhaps even others, and people will be attracted by the natural beauty of nature. And in that situation of being immersed in the beauty of Krishna's external energy, they will sort of open their hearts, and they become kind of vulnerable, if you will, or window opens." And he said, "This is the perfect opportunity to enlighten them about spirituality and begin their spiritual life, sort of plant that devotional seed." So we did that in Miami, and then in time I was asked to come to Hawaii and develop projects there. And we've developed a beautiful project, which is now incredibly successful. Tour buses are coming by just to see the property, even from the outside, what to speak of those who come in. And when people come in, I'm always seeing as they go, "Wow," looking at this beauty. And they're like out of the box. And then we take that opportunity to start telling them about what inspired. Because they're always asked, "Why did you develop this beautiful place? How did this happen?" And I said, "Well, this is the instruction of my spiritual master, to develop this beautiful tropical paradise." And then tell people, really, what is the source of all this? Where did this beauty come from? And that's the opportunity to plant that seed and give them one of Srila Prabhupada's books and send them away and praying that their spiritual life will now begin. When Srila Prabhupada was visiting us in Miami, and he was exiting the temple room, and as he was leaving the temple room, there's 2 exits. You could go out through the main exit, but Prabhupada decided to go out the side exit, which took him through the Tulsi room, where we had many Tulsi plants. At that time, I was a Tulsi Pujari, and I had built many pots, big wooden pots for Tulsi, and had set up ultraviolet lights. And Prabhupada walked through the Tulsi room. I was right with him, right by his side. And Prabhupada stopped, and he looked around at the Tulsis, and a beautiful smile came across his face, and he put his hands up in the air, and he said, "This is very nice." So, number one, it really invoked within my heart great appreciation of Prabhupada, recognizing my service and being happy with my service. But even furthermore, it deepened my relationship with Tulsi Devi. And since that time and to this very day, I take great joy and great pride in serving Srimati Tulsi, because she is the mother of devotion. At the very first festival that we had in Mayapur in 1974, I was a very young devotee. I'd only been a devotee for 1 year. And Srila Prabhupada was walking from greeting the deities down the aisle of devotees back to his Vyasasan. And I saw devotees. I was kind of looking down the aisle. Everybody was touching his feet as he went by. So as he got closer and closer and closer, it was like my turn. And I reached out. I closed my eyes and I grabbed his feet. And I could feel it was just like velvet. They're the softest, most wonderful feeling. My hands were just like melting, like his feet were like melting like butter. It was just so sweet. And then all of a sudden it crossed my mind, wait a minute, I'm holding his feet. I'm stopping Prabhupada from moving. And then my heart started going real fast. I pulled my hands back and I kind of looked up sheepishly and I saw Prabhupada just was smiling at me, just like the moon was smiling. It was just such an expression of love. And I guess I understood from that Srila Prabhupada recognized what a neophyte, how I just didn't really know what I was doing and didn't mean any harm. But to encourage me, he gave me such a smile of love, and that really deepened my relationship with him. When I was in a darshan with Srila Prabhupada in Potomac, Maryland, 1976, when I was showing Srila Prabhupada pictures from our book and showing him our temple, Prabhupada asked me an unusual question I never expected him to ask. He said, "How many rooms are in the temple?" And very foolishly, without thinking, I'd have no idea where it came. I just blurted out, 13 rooms, Srila Prabhupada. And I said it very authoritatively. It must be the cheating propensity. But I just said that. Prabhupada nodded. And when I went back to the temple, I actually went through with a little notebook and I was noting down how many rooms there were. The rooms you didn't think of, the laundry room, the bedroom, the closets, that, the other. And it ended up, there was exactly 13 rooms. So I suppose my realization was that number 13 came from Super Soul. But the spiritual master and Super Soul, they're really, in a sense, one and the same. Jive sakshat nahi taite guru chaita rupe, shiksha guru hoy Krishna mahanta sarupe. So because we can't see Super Soul within, he comes without as the guru. So as a team, Prabhupada asked the question, and then the guru within inside, Super Soul, told me how many rooms it was, and everything turned out fine. But it was just a great realization how in touch Prabhupada is with Super Soul and how they work as a team. I often hear devotees saying that, geez, I hope I'm going to make it. I'm not sure if I'm going to go back to Godhead in this lifetime. I often ask the question, well, do you chant 16 rounds? Yes. Do you follow the principles? Yes. Are you doing some service? Yes. Are you staying in association with devotees? Well, I always remember back, one time when Srila Prabhupada came to the temple in Maryland, and I had the honor of being there. And at the end of the class, I don't remember everything Prabhupada talked about, but he concluded, as he does so often, he said, simply chant your rounds, follow the 4 regular principles, and at the end of this life, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. I remember that so clearly in my mind. I can literally see Prabhupada right now and those words just coming out of his lotus mouth. And I always share that with devotees, that we can take Prabhupada at his word. Prabhupada wasn't exaggerating. Prabhupada wasn't bluffing. If we simply follow his basic instructions, Prabhupada told us we're going to go back to home, back to Godhead at the end of this life. So if we do that, it's a simple process. We simply follow his instructions, then we can be assured, because Prabhupada told us so, that we'll attain all perfection and go back to the lotus feet of Krishna. So to share this realization, you have to bear with me for a moment, a little sort of preface. When I was a young man, 15 years old, one morning a police officer knocked on our door, and he came in and informed us that my father had died untimely in an accident at our summer home, and there was an explosion. And one moment he was there, one moment he was gone. Well, my family, everyone was devastated, and everyone was crying and crying. But for some reason, I didn't cry. And days went by, I think it was about 3 or 4 days until the funeral. I never cried, but everyone was coming, was crying and crying. I never cried. As we were leaving the funeral and driving in the limousine, all of a sudden the tears just flowed like rivers out of my eyes. So I knew, and I had that realization, that understanding. In 1977, when Srila Prabhupada left us, I was a temple president. Had only been a president for just a few years, maybe 1 year. And when we got notice that Srila Prabhupada had left us, I called all the devotees into the temple room and had a kirtan, and devotees were all crying and crying. But I wasn't crying. For some reason, tears never came. I thought, well, okay, it's going to come. Because I knew when I was a child the experience of my father leaving. And this is really my real father. Prabhupada's like the ultimate father. I knew it was going to come. So days went by and days went by, and I was waiting. It never came. Years went by. Decades went by. And I'm wondering, why no tears? So my conclusion is probably two things going on. One is just my lack of love for Srila Prabhupada as a neophyte. But perhaps, and I hope this is true, and I'm sort of thinking this in my heart, is that unlike my father, my material father, Prabhupada never left us. And as I chant my japa in the morning, as I struggle to follow very strictly the principles, as I'm always speaking, I'm feeling that Prabhupada is always with me. There's not a moment in my life I don't feel Prabhupada's presence. So that was my realization, is that Prabhupada never ever left, and he's always with us, and that's wonderful. Everyone in this world, materially, wants something from us. Even the mother, who is described as the closest reflection of true love in this world. Even my mother, who loves me like crazy, wants something back. But when I met Srila Prabhupada, it was so clear all he wanted to do was give, simply to give. And all the infinite qualities that Srila Prabhupada manifests, his compassion, his love, his understanding, they're just, I couldn't pick a single quality to say that stands out in my mind, because they're all manifest somehow. And I feel so incredibly blessed and fortunate that somehow Mahaprabhu came and Srila Prabhupada became part of that mission and came to the Western world, got on that Jaladuta and bared everything that he had to do to come here in his mission. And somehow I was dragged to his lotus feet, and I'm forever grateful.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu